Klein literally over here playing with fire and got burnt. Dude literally looking into the eye of a fire and getting his face burnt off. But yes, episode 6 of Lord of Mysteries. Very, very interesting episode. I like this kind of, even though it feels like a lot of these episodes almost feel episodic in a way, almost like a monster per episode, it still has like a lot of this kind of obvious through line they're kind of building up. But I felt like this episode more than the other one was more interesting in the idea that is our first look at somebody who's like massively OP. I was kind of waiting for the moment that we would get like a very low number sequence person. Like we would find that OP character suddenly pops out of nowhere with like at least like a 5 sequence. I don't know. I feel like Azic could possibly be at least 5. Because what I'm assuming is happening here is because he's a corpse collector. It didn't say what sequence he was. My assumption is that a lot of what he's doing, or at least he's done in the past, was related to his corpse collecting. I mean, that whole divination that he ended up doing, not really divination, but the whole blood-seeking thing that he does, which I'm assuming is part of his powers, you know, essentially bringing up this massive door that opens up and just has thousands upon thousands, if not millions, of skulls in it. I'm assuming that's a whole, like, corpse collector thing. It's really turning him into being sort of a necromancer. This is a guy that is able to control hordes of spirits of people, raise them from the dead, and command them as an army. He was taking on literally armies. Him by himself seemingly was taking on armies and never dying. Even on the battlefield where he fell, or at least that may have been the first time he fell, he literally is standing right back up and taking blows and never falling down. It seems like he's just basically a walking corpse. And it seems like he's lived for many, many centuries. So I'm assuming that's part of the corpse collector ability. Like he's, again, really high sequence or low sequence. I keep wanting to say high, but it's technically a low number. I want to say 5, but the ability to essentially be immortal, I would assume that's at least maybe a 4 or 3. But again, we haven't really gotten a true sense of just how powerful each number is. I mean, we did get a sense that we had one guy that was at least a 7 or maybe a 6, which was handing off Clown to Klein. And he seemed really, really clever and very skilled, but I don't think it's going to be even further than that. I think each level is going to be similar to like Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, where every level you go up is like a massive leap. We're not talking about like small changes in your power, but we've only really had like 9, 8s, and 7. This is the first time where I think we're getting into like 5 or 4 or something like that. So it was a really cool kind of insight into somebody that's seemingly extremely powerful, even though we haven't really seemingly touched the surface of it, even though we did get that whole backstory, which again showed that he was taking on tons of people. But none of them were Beyonders assumed, so it's not as if he had like a challenge back then. But it was a really cool little insight to that. But yeah, really cool stuff in this episode. Seemingly Klein may possibly got his next pathway. I don't know. I don't know that this is implying that he's going to go that pathway, or if he just has the formula, the sequence, and he can do something with it. Or did he just get the name? It didn't really say exactly what he got there, but it did say that he got a reward for it, and it could just be simply the name. But I'm curious to see if he ends up bartering with that, or if he uses it himself, or what. But I've been kind of speculating for a long time that eventually Klein would have multiple pathways. That would be his OP main character ability for this story, but we haven't quite seen it yet. It was either going to be the fact that he'd had multiple pathways, or he figures out how to use his serial abilities to bring in essentially the fog powers to use in this world. That's an eventuality, I think. But anyways, let's get into the episode proper, opening up with, yes, the fact that he did a divination or an interpretation of the dreams of Miss Elizabeth. Turns out that, yes, there is this this wraith that is at this castle in Lammed. So they go to the Lammed Castle, where they end up finding a knight. And yeah, they bring an artifact with them. So we get our second artifact that has been revealed in the series so far. I really love the first artifact. This one was less interesting. I mean, it's really the story behind the actual emblem itself or the artifact that was interesting. But the artifact itself, yeah, it's OP. It's a really OP artifact like they typically are, but it was less cool than the crazy psycho puppet that comes out of nowhere and starts puppeteering people. But yeah, I like the fact that, yes, Dunn ends up explaining what the actual artifact does, and the fact that it's the mutated sun sacred emblem. And apparently anything that's within 15 meters of it, wraiths or whatnot, disappear. But also, Beyonders inside of it, after a while, 6 hours, will turn into idiots. Now, it makes a lot of sense when we get into the actual emblem later on, the fact that it makes all of them praise the sun. All they know is just to praise the sun. Which, yes, makes sense that it seems like it has like a droplet of the sun that's literally been like encapsulated into it. That after a while being around it, you're going to start praising it. That was very interesting there. But yeah, they go in there. They end up finding the Wraith itself. Really cool fight there. Once again, Dunn being a badass. Like, Dunn's so freaking cool, dude. Again, I say it every single episode that he does something. I hate the fact that eventually he's probably going to die. But he's so freaking cool. Like that shot that Klein took. He goes towards the emblem and the knight just elbows him in the face. And it's like the impact is so great. It's just the blood just gets gushed out of his eyeballs. He's like, wait, it doesn't hurt. Oh, it's all a dream. Dunn's over there just like, whatever. The thing comes after him. He's like, yeah, whatever. Here, time's up, boy. It's like, damn, dude. Stop being so freaking cool, Dunn. Dunn's so freaking cool. But yeah, afterwards, they decide to hang out to make sure this stuff is kind of gone, and Klein takes first watch. I get that idea of the fact that they kind of have to separate themselves, so Klein's holding on to it while they can get out of that 15-meter range. That way they can come back in, take it from him, and he don't go crazy and start praising the sun. But yes, because he can't seem to keep his neck out of trouble. I remember that because, like, way back there, was it Neil? Neil's like, don't look into things that you don't need to be looking into. Klein just like, whatever, gonna do it. This emblem's super crazy cool. Let's go ahead and do a divination on it. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Goes up in the fog, and then he manifests it up there, which is interesting that he can manifest things up there just purely by sight, whatever, and he can still do a divination on it. That's actually the more interesting thing there. But yes, he does a divination up there, hoping that the interference that's around it will go away. And yeah, ends up getting a little vision of the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun, which possessed the Sun Pathway, where he witnesses a guy holding up the emblem towards some sort of liquid, and the liquid encapsulates into the emblem. It seems to evaporate the guy the moment that it hits it, so that's kind of crazy. But yeah, I like the fact that he's watching that whole thing happen, and then he like has like a rewind button. He's doing this divination. He's watching what's happening there. And it's like a video playing of how this thing is created. And he's like, okay, let's go back a little bit. Rewind. I'm just waiting for him to like zoom in, enhance. He just got this little control panel on his table. But anyways, jokes aside. Yes, eventually he decides to, again, play with fire. Oh, what's this liquid? Some expensive Beyonder material? Goes ahead and touches it, to which pretty much is able to see like a deity. He believes that he gazed upon directly to a deity. This sun just literally set him on fire through a divination. He's looking at a divination of an event, and even then, it's enough that he's literally burned by what he assumes is looking at a deity within this vision. That crazy. Thankfully, the gray fog shields him, protects him, douses him with water, but completely obliterates most everything in that area that he's created. That's how crazy this is. He says he's lucky that the gray fog shielded him partially, because otherwise he would have been turned into ash. He wants to limit his divination now. He doesn't know what crazy... Again, Neil literally told you, don't look into this stuff. You're going to see something you shouldn't see. I was almost hoping like him to have sort of a flashback to that moment, whoever told him that, of going, don't look into things that you're not supposed to look into. Yeah, I shouldn't do that. But that's when the crazy things happen. Suddenly, the burn marks go away, and letters start appearing on his skin. It says Angel of Pure White, which later on he still doesn't know exactly what that means. It doesn't seem like he gets an answer there. He said method for creating flaring sun charm. So it seems like he's learned how to make... I don't know if that's what they called that emblem that he had. It's the 30782, but that says mutated sun sacred emblem. This is a creating flaring sun charm. So this is possibly going to be something else that he can now create. He says the sun pathway, the unshadowed, the priest of light, must not gaze directly at gods. It literally says, stop it, you idiot. Stop looking at the fire. And he says, yeah, reward for tanking a boss for a minute. Sequence 4, unshadowed, first time receiving a higher sequence. And again, this should be the sun pathway. This is a sequence 4. Sequence 4. That, again, is higher than anything we've seen so far. And again, I'm speculating that Azic might be a 5 or 4. So this is really up there. But again, the question mark is Is he just finding the name? Is this the potion? Does he have the ingredients that he needs to do that? Or does he have the list of ingredients that he can now go find the ingredients? But my assumption is that he's probably going to have maybe possibly a drop of that deity blood. Because again, he's like, wow, that amulet's really powerful now that I've figured out how it's, created. I must find an opportunity to exploit a drop of that deity blood. I'm wondering if he possibly needs that for the sequence potion. Like, again, does he have it? Is he going to have to put it together? Or, again, is he going to barter with this? Assuming that I can't go a second pathway, so maybe I can find somebody of the sun, and I can barter with them this. Not that I would be too keen on that. Like, that's one of those aspects of, like, would you want to barter with something like that and thus give somebody a sequence 4? Do you really want to empower somebody like that? Because, again, I would assume that, again, that's even closer to the gods itself. Would you want to empower somebody of the sun pathway? You're basically giving somebody a weapon. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I was kind of curious if this would be our first moment where Klein would end up going a second pathway. But we'll have to see when he thinks about it again. I'm surprised the rest of the episode he didn't really think about it. Next time he thinks about it, what am I going to do with this? I have this now. What am I going to do? Anyways, cool stuff there. But yeah, really, really interesting little insight into, again, the sun pathway, the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun. Anyways, moving on from there, yes, Klein ends up getting a message from Azik. He goes over to the school again, ends up seeing the painting of the Lammed Castle. So we find out later on that, yeah, Azik was, doing divinations and eventually seeing a dream. And a lot of this stuff seems to be connected to Klein himself. A lot of the divinations he's doing, everything, his fate itself seems to be tied directly to Klein, which makes sense. If he's doing divinations and eventually he does end up going there with Klein, yeah, his that fate's going to be kind of tied to him. It does imply later on when Klein does a divination on him that, yes, the divination does imply that he should help out Azik because at some point in the future, Azic's going to save his butt. And again, with him being seemingly a very high, again, low sequence of the corpse collector, I'm assuming he's going to be very powerful and be able to help him out a lot. Is it going to have something related to, again, death and all that kind of stuff? That's a question mark. Seems like he's some sort of, again, necromancer, some type of immortal. Maybe something about that can end up applying to Klein. Anyways, he got information about Hornicus, which he was looking into for Klein. I like the fact he's like, read it here. No, that's all right. I was going to leave. Nope, you're not a student here anymore. You're going to read it here. You seem very nervous. You're never nervous around me before. You always have one clump of sugar. Why do you have more than one now? You seem very anxious. You've never been anxious around me. Something odd about you. It's like, yeah, he's smelling something there, Klein. I'm surprised we never really had Melissa or Benson kind of mention things. I mean, Melissa's seeing that Klein is acting different, or at least being very stressed. That's why she keeps trying to help him out and very worried for him, but never really like, is that really you? And again, I think it helps the fact that, again, he has memories of Klein, just mostly scattered or whatever. So anyways, a lot of information in this book with that. A lot of it, I'm not really connecting it being important right now. It's probably a lot of the more world building stuff that might come up again later on. But apparently Hornicus mountain range spans Loen and Intis. The ruins prove that the ancient nation exists long ago. He points out the fact that, yes, the humans in the paintings look similar to humans now, so he's fine with calling them humans. They believe that death is not the end, and deceased family bless them in the Evernight. It points out the fact that whenever someone dies, they place them next to their beds for 3 whole days. But then the paintings stop. Now here's the part where I'm kind of wondering if this sort of connects with the whole thing with Azic, the corpse collector or whatever, and the idea that it gets into the fact that, yeah, there's no other paintings there, and it's implying that there's no entombment that happens, and there's no corpses. So possibly the people just disappeared. Or do they just not die is the question mark there. Again, with the whole episode, the most of the second half of the episode circling around Azic himself and that he essentially is not dying, it makes me believe the idea of these individuals possibly not dying. Is Azic a part of this bloodline, that they just don't die? Something like that. Or again, does it have ties with the corpse collectors? That pathway in general. I don't know. That's sort of where my brain sort of went with this whole discussion. But yeah, they get into the idea that the ancient civilization worshiped the mysterious being called Her, the ruler of Evernight, mother of the sky. So interesting stuff there. Again, more massive, deep world building kind of stuff. Anyways, yeah, that's when he points out that he's being anxious and that, yes, he did some divinations and a lot of him's tied to Klein and that he's not there to hurt him, but he wants to know more about his past. So he's like, you've seen the castle? Take me there. It kind of implied the idea of, you know that castle? Take me there. I know that castle. You're taking me there. Anyways, they end up getting to the castle. I love this whole little sequence because it's very beautiful, by the way. Just going into the castle, just seeing like this kind of, again, paralleling what he's seeing now and what he was seeing in his dreams. Going by the stables with the horse, going inside the castle, his son running by, playing his sword, whatever. Very brief moment where he pulls a sword and this entire place just kind of rebuilds into what it once was. Again, really, really cool stuff there. But eventually going down inside of the tome below where he ends up finding his son. Now this is interesting because it implies the idea that as we get into his history, again, he was this warrior that was defeated on this battlefield. They were burning all the corpses, and then suddenly Azic rises out of the corpses and starts beating everybody up. They kind of get him down at some point, but then suddenly he just summons a massive titan. Like out of nowhere, he just summons a titan. The titan just comes out of nowhere and just starts stepping on people. He just creates his own trampling. He creates his own trampling. The skeleton going around stepping on things, which, yes, immediately recalled that skeleton was what we see when we first seen Azic in that one episode. Once Klein left, this little skeleton appeared in the corner. But yeah, he summons that, just takes down everybody, ends up getting recognized for his accomplishments, has a wife and a son. They're living happily ever after. And yeah, it was interesting at some point Klein mentions he looks happy. He looks like a very happy person. It's different than in the portrait. What happened? And it seems to imply that, yes, over time, a lot of what was him and what he was, which seemingly is, again, some sort of necromancer or something that is controlling the dead, something that is collecting spirits around him, that, yeah, after a while, that started to kind of weigh down upon his family. Seemed like his wife was getting sick. Seemed like his son was getting sick. I don't know. It seemed to be that the presence of all these spirits was affecting his family. So he decided to leave. And then once he left, it seemed like his son, despite him leaving, hoping that his son would be happy after that, his son seemed to have been tormented by it. It implies the idea that the son was buried in the tome below. But then at some point, somebody came by and stole his head. Somewhere within the last 3 months, sometime within the last 3 months, somebody came in there and stole the skull. And yeah, Azic does his little blood tracking thing. It ends up attacking Klein. Klein's like, wait, it was me. It was me. Why didn't do it? I was like, yeah, that's very interesting. I'm kind of curious as to how he did that. Was it the old Klein? That was not 3 months ago. It's been longer than 3 months since he's taken over that body. No, it seems, again, his fates are tied with Klein. So the divination went through him and summons a massive door that shows him something that is untraceable. So lost the lead, basically. But yeah, very, very interesting little setup here. And again, this whole after story segment where it really hits on the fact that he's been living for a long time. Every few decades, he falls into slumber. Then he wakes up, forgetting everything. But he has these dreams. Some of the dreams has him with a son and a wife. This other one, he's got a beautiful wife and 3 children. But the similarity across all of them is the fact that in the end, he hurts them. And he leaves. And it's gotten to a point, apparently, after so many of these, that he is now secluding himself. He's not wanting the warmth of a family. He's afraid of it. It's the idea of living for so long, and with all these lives being so fleeting, secluding himself is much better. He doesn't have to worry about that pain. And that's what he's kind of in right now. But he thanks Klein for kind of showing him these memories again so that he can kind of see this once more. It is kind of a sad reality because, again, he's chosen to seclude himself because he's lived so many lives. He's lived through so many lived experiences with family and whatnot that it's hurt so much after a while that he's chosen to leave it behind. But yet Klein here, at least showing him, I guess one of them is real. I guess that's really the key thing here because he's always seen these dreams. It's not like they're ever going away. He's seen the dream of this particular castle. Is it because Klein showed him physically, your dreams are not just dreams, they're reality? You actually live this moment? That he now is able to thank Klein because they're like, oh, so they weren't just dreams. They were reality. Thank you for showing me that. Because he said something effective, I've always been kind of sailing around and never having a purpose or something like that, but now I have a heading. Thank you for giving me that. And yeah, Klein kind of agrees with him there. Yeah, I'm kind of the similar situation. I'm in this world. I am basically a lone ship. This isn't my place. I'm not supposed to be here. I don't even know when I'm going to return home, but thankfully I have Benson and Melissa. I have a safe harbor that I can dock my boat into, and I can be with them and be in peace, even though I'm not Klein. So again, I think it's sort of implying that Klein sort of showed him the same thing he's currently experiencing. I feel like I'm not supposed to be here, that I'm kind of diving into this world, but I had a home. I have family, even though they might not be around anymore, or maybe they're here currently. I've had that experience. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting little look into, again, Azic's character. I think that was a very cool look into a character. And if they did so well with that character, because honestly, with none of the other characters, we've really had like a deep dive into him. Azic's the first one that we really had a deep dive. Like even Klein's very kind of surface level so far, I feel, is still trying to keep a lot of what the old Klein was actually doing a secret. Like they don't want to get into it just quite yet. He was looking into this notebook, but we haven't really learned much about it. Azic is the first character we've literally seen his entire life. So with them doing kind of a very interesting twist on his character, it has me kind of interested to see what they'll do with the future characters. Admittedly, though, I do see sort of how Azic's storytelling does sort of benefit Klein, because again, now he's seeing that he does have a place to call home and that he's going to want to appreciate more, you know, make those memories with them. But it does kind of beg the question, and I'm kind of surprised that he didn't get into it now. I'm not technically Klein, but I am enjoying Klein's life. But the question is, what happens when he leaves? When he does go home, does Klein just die? He's not there anymore, right? He died technically. That's a question mark. Anyways, cool stuff. We also did get a mid-card that talked about the Epoch timeline, which I don't think we've really technically got into yet. I mean, we've touched briefly on the first Epoch and a little bit into the fourth, but we really haven't had a full timeline. First Epoch is the Age of Chaos. The creator awakens from chaos, creating light and forming all things from his body, which again, we did technically get into a little bit with that, with the whole breaking up of his body. Second Epoch, which is the Dark Epoch, Evernight, Goddess awakens. Third Epoch, Cataclysm Epoch, humans survive the Great Cataclysm with the blessings of protection of the gods, which I think we did technically touch on that a little bit. Fourth Epoch is Epoch of the Gods, frequent wars and changing of dynasties, which, yeah, that would probably be around the time that we were talking about with Azic. A lot of war happening in that whole backstory. And the fifth Epoch, the Iron Age, the seven gods bless the northern continent. Which I don't know if we've gotten really much about that at all, which again, I would assume is the current time anyways, so cool stuff. Cool stuff, interesting episode. Again, curious to see what Klein does with his new sequence of the sun. Again, I'll be curious if he ends up selling it, bartering it, or, again, using it. But cool stuff. But anyways, that's my thoughts on episode 6 of Lord of Mysteries. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, hit the like button down below. If you like this content and want to support the channel more, become a member of the channel. But until next time, y'all take care.